Hey there YouTube, this is Jimmy with To The Top Crane. Just got done giving this thing a bath. It was pretty filthy actually. It took me about 3.5 hours and $97 worth of quarters. Actually I just washed it here with our pressure washer, but I've gotten a couple questions on some of the safety stuff on the crane, so I'm going to cover a few quick things here on the end of the boom, and then I'm going to show you guys some rigging. I know I've gotten questions on rigging. So one of the biggest safety features on this crane, and most any crane anymore, is this right here. So if you've heard me talk about the anti-two block switch or the anti-two block weight, any of my overhead footage, I've got a magnet mount that I stick on this weight right here, and it just hangs on the side. I actually tie it off, and I point the camera straight to the ground, so that's how I get aerial shots. But right up here, if you follow this chain up, it goes to that little box, and that's a switch. So when the block is down lower, this weight is allowed to hang on the cable, and then it pulls down and it activates that switch. So if you reel this block up, and you can see we've got slack in the chain because the block's reeled up so far, what it does is allows that switch to come up, and it opens the circuit, and that tells the crane that the lower block is getting close to the top block. So this is the top block on the boom, where the shivs are at, and then there's the shivs over the top of the end of the boom. But this is called the top block, this is the bottom block, and that switch keeps you from crashing this block into this block. Then another safety feature on these is this. So we call this a mouse trap, and it's just a latch that once you drop your rigging in the hook, it can't come back out of the top of the hook. So this absolutely has to be on and functional anytime you're doing crane work. Over here on our 100-ton block, it's got a Siamese hook or a sister hook, whatever you want to call it, and so it's got one on each side. And our big block's got the same style hook on it. And then over here we have the anemometer. So this pin's on at the top of the boom, and this monitors the wind speed. So it's just got a plug on the end of it, and I plug it in, computer reads it, and this thing's very sensitive. I mean, we've got just a little bit of a breeze coming in here, and you can see it's moving it. But this is what tells me my wind speed, and it sits out there on the tip of the crane. So we talked about a couple safety things. I'm going to jump up on the deck of our support truck, and I'll show you guys some of the rigging that we use. Okay, so this is one of the rigging boxes on our support truck. You can see we've got a bunch of shackles in the top shelf. We've got some nylons or polyester in the bottom. Here's a couple of our bigger shackles. These aren't the biggest that we've got, but these are 25-ton capacity, 1 3/4 Crosby shackles. And there, I'll tell everybody, there's some actually some fake Crosbys out there, some knockoffs. One of the telltales have been told to discerning a fake Crosby from a real Crosby is Crosby has these marks. I don't know if you can see them right here and right here. And what that does is when you have this in your hook, so your hook would be right here, that shows you your sling angle from mark to mark. Each mark would give you a 45-degree sling angle. So these are only rated for 25 tons at a 45-degree sling angle or less. But and also the 1 3/4 is the pin diameter. So we can screw this out. You can see these are removable pins. So the pin diameter is 1 3/4. Now some people call these clevises, and we hear that a lot. And I'm going to tell you the difference between the two. A shackle has a screw-in pin, so shackle's got threads on it up here on this pin. A clevis has a slide-in pin with either a retaining pin on the back side or a nut that screws on, and then a retaining pin, or sometimes just a nut. So if you just slide the pin in, it's a clevis. If you screw it in, it's a shackle. So we've got some 1 3/4 there. What size we got here? 1 1/4 inch, and that's a 12-ton shackle. And then some of our nylons. So these are continuous. What that is, it's just a big loop. And this is a 10-footer. I'll show you the tag. Hopefully it'll zoom in on that. So this is good for 21.2 vertical. That's 21,200 pounds. 17,000 pounds is a choker, and you can probably tell by the picture how that works. And then 42,400 pounds is a basket. And I'll show you guys examples of that here in a minute on the different rigging, or how you rig it to get straight line, shackle, or choker or basket. Then we've got some tans or some oranges. Still got the tag on them. 50,000 pounds straight line pull, and I'm reading this upside down. I guess I can turn it around for you guys. But 50,000 pounds straight line, 40,000 is a choker, and 100,000 is a basket. And then some more blues on that side, so same capacity as the other ones. We'll shut this one. I'll go to the other side of the box, or the other box. Okay, you can see we got more shackles. I mean, we've got them clear down to these little bitty fellas, and they're still Crosby's. 2-ton. So that's a 1/2 inch shackle, 1/2 inch pin diameter. We use these on AC units and whatnot, and we've actually even got some that are a little smaller than this, but typically don't keep them with that crane. I mean, it's kind of pointless to have that smaller rigging. But we've got some other. Here's a continuous, and I'll use this one. This is a short continuous. I'll use this one to show you guys the different rigging practices. But you can see 10.6 vertical, 8,500 as a choker, 21.2 as a basket. Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this in the viewfinder. I can't tell. I got the camera facing towards me, but okay. So if we were gonna rig this bar, and it was just like this, then that would be straight line pull. So that's a straight line. Oh, looks like our 50-ton just got back. Now, if we were rigging the bar and we had it like this, you can see it's just looped around it. That's a basket. And then if we pulled it through, then that's a choker. And that's the weakest form of rigging, is choking it. Back here on the deck, we've got a couple sets of spreaders. So this is got a ring with two 20-foot 1-inch legs on it, and these are cable spreaders. We've got hooks on the bottom side with another latch on them, safety latch. These are Crosby hooks. They've got the 45-degree angle delineation in them. And I'll show you the tags on these. Some people have trouble reading these tags, and these tags have to be on, or these are no good anymore. So on the one side of the tag, let's see if I can get zoomed in here. So it's a 1-inch diameter cable. Let's see if you can read that. 20 feet long. Month and year that it was put into service, or that it was made. So February of 2017 on these. And then on the capacity on the back side, get my viewfinder back up here. Okay, so these are good for 17 tons at a 60-degree sling angle. And then 14 tons at a 45-degree sling angle. And then 9.8 at a 30-degree sling angle. So what that is if you have your hook here and a pick point here and a pick point here, this would be your sling angle. So if you have a straight line straight down from your hook and then over to the pick point, this angle running from one point up to the other is your sling angle. So the steeper the angle this way, the stronger the sling, or the stronger the cable is, or the sling, any of your rigging. So hopefully I didn't confuse anybody on that. Another piece, we got our second piece of counterweight. So that's 26,000 pounds and some change of counterweight. Our crane mats that we set up on to help support the crane, spreads the weight of the outrigger forces out on a larger surface area. And then spreader beams. We keep spreader beams, extendable beams on the trailer that use them on some tanks, use them sometimes for houses, sometimes different machinery. I think these are the biggest shackles we've got. These are threes. These are 3-inch shackles. Try to get my hand down here for reference. Even that might not be a good enough reference. So here's my cell phone. This is a Samsung Galaxy S8. So it gives you an idea of the size of that shackle. That shackle's probably 125 pounds. And I'll have to look up the specs on it. It's not a Crosby. I don't remember who makes it, and those are actually pretty old ones. But I'll look up the specs and get the capacity for you guys on that. I know it's a lot. You can see we've got all kinds of different stuff. We've got steel chokers and rolling blocks. What the rolling blocks do is you can have one single point there. You can run a steel choker through here, and it drops it off to 2 pick points that are evenly distributed through this rolling block. What else do we have? Kind of giving you guys just a quick tour. This is our big rigging box. The box is small. This just has big stuff in it. So these are 30-foot long. I think they're 92,400 pound capacity each, straight line pull. I think they're polyester, but yeah, 92,400 pounds and a straight line pull is what they're good for. And then in the bottom, let's see if I can uncover it. These things are man killers. They are heavy. Oh, we're getting close. That is a 2.5-inch Crosby shackle in the bottom. So here's my hand next to it. That shackle weighs 82 pounds. And that's all I'm messing with on those. Those things, they're heavy. On the side box on the trailer on one of our for our 100-ton support truck, we've got these hooks. These are Crosby's as well. And some of you might be saying, well, those don't have a latch in them. What they're good for is you can poke this point into a hole on something and pick it up. Foundry hooks are the only hooks that are rated for tip loading. So the entire capacity of the hook can be supported out here on the tip of the hook. So these are tip loaded, or you can tip load these. But the reason why they're called Foundry hooks is they're used a lot in foundries. We use these sometimes for picking up rail cars and whatnot, containers, just anything that's got a big hole in it that we can't put a shackle in, then we can shove these Foundry hooks into it and pick it up that way. This is the big block for the 200-ton. So when I say this is a 7-shiv block, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that allows me to put 14 parts of line on the crane and pick up a lot of heavy stuff. But this block, it's sitting next to a step deck semi-trailer. So it's a little over 3 feet tall. It's got a Siamese hook or a sister hook. Here's our tag on it. So it's rated for 125 metric tons. It weighs 1,350 kilos. So all you metric people out there will get that right off. Us standard people will have to convert that. So just take your 1,350 times 2.2. And since this stuff is sitting here, I'll show you. These are house shackles. So whenever we're picking up a house, these are the shackles that go through the long straps. And I'll show you some of those house straps. I get asked why we don't use spreader beams on picking houses. It's because we have these long straps. These are 6-inch wide by 60-foot long straps. There's no real reason to use a spreader beam unless there's a risk of those straps pulling in the top of the house too tight. So I tend to like to pick without beams if possible, just because it's less rigging involved, requires less headroom, and the less rigging, the less points of failure. So I prefer to go without spreader beams where I can. And picking houses, it works very well without spreader beams, as long as your straps are long enough. So anyway, I hope that covers everything on rigging that people had questions on. If you have some more questions, throw them in comments. I'll do my best to answer them, and I'll try to show you guys more of that stuff when we're out on job. But I figured I'd talk about it since I had people asking for it.